warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, welcome back with me, Riska Amalia. By the way, how's your condition in this quarantine? Is it terrible? May Allah grant us mercy, safety, and happiness under this pandemic situation. Okay, let's move on. I'm Riska Amalia. I'm from English Education Department, second semester in ALAUDDIN State Islamic University of Makassar. This video is about my mid-test assignment for Introduction to Literature subject. I make this video because my mid-test in this subject. So the question is, what I'm going to do in this video? In this video, I'm going to explain about 5 main topics that have been taught before. The first topic is the concept of literature in ELT. Second, the position literature in the mainstream of ELT. Third, the approaches to the use of literature. Fourth, literary works for English language teaching. And the last, teaching methods and ELT methods. So let's get started. The concept of literature in ELT. There are 3 questions in this topic. First, what is literature? To find out what is literature, let's take a look with the expert's definition. First, come from Basnet and Mumford in 1993, find literature as cultural documents of a country or countries. Second, from Eggleton in 1983, consider literature is an art. Next, from Onek Usi, I'm not sure, in 2013, say that literature is any imaginative and beautiful creation in words, whether oral or written, which explores man as he struggles to survive in his existential position and his provides entertainment, information, education, and excitement to its audience. And the last but not least is from John Macri in 1994, makes a clearer and more specific definition regarding literature as a literary work. He distinguishes between literature with capital L, then defined as a classical text, such as Shakespeare and Dickens, and literature with small l, which is then recognized as a fable, fictions, song lyrics, and so on. So what we got from two experts' definition, at least we got 3 things in two definitions. First, it's a written or spoken work. Second, it's a human imaginative creation, generally used to entertain or to educate people. And finally, what is literature? Literature may be defined as spoken or written text from humans' imaginative creation, which used to entertain or to educate the audience or the other people. The second question is, what is literature for ELT? Literature for ELT in this regard means what teacher have to do to using literature in ELT or to implement literature in ELT, like what teacher have to do before teaching, after while teaching, or maybe after teaching, and it calls pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching. These are the 3 main stages in literature for ELT. For the more explanation about what those are, I will explain in the last topic in teaching method and ELT method topics. So in this regard, I just explain in general explanation. For more detailed explanation or the theory of those main stages, I will explain in the 5 topics in the last topic. Okay, the third question is, what is the relationship between literature and ELT? Some scholars provide illustrations about the relationship between literature and ELT. first is come from Welleck and Warren in 1970, giving illustration. Language is the material of literature, as stone or bronze is of sculpture, paints of picture, and sounds of music. The illustration seems to imply that language is system of communication, whereas the literature is the message being communicated. Second come from Emmanuel and Friends in 2013, claim that language and literature as two sides of the same coin, that it's hard to say which of the two takes precedence over the other. Their relationship can be illustrated relation between chicken and egg. Without egg, there will be no chicken, and without chicken, there will be no egg. It means they cannot be separated. They need each other. Language is one method of communicating message, when literature can be used to convey message being communicated. So it's the relationship between them, it's symbiotic, one in which one will not exist without the other. The position of literature in the mainstream of ELT. First question is, what is the trend of ELT and the status of literature in ELT? Equip the learners with knowledge of communication in real social interaction by using natural English with a real native English speaker. There are at least two important things in the teacher perception regarding ELT. First is the use of functional language, such as greeting, apologizing, and etc. Second is the use of authentic material as a way to expose the language, which is used in real-life situation by native speaker of English. This literature start becoming not popular when the orientation of language teaching and learning is mostly focused on the functional use of language. Functional language in this regards mean language that we use in daily communication or in daily activities, such as apologizing, greeting, communication, and etc. According to Nuttall in 1996, authentic materials can be an option for teachers because they are the representations of the language used for real-life purposes by real people. According to Edmondson in 1997, even if literature recognized as authentic materials, studying language through literature is deemed unable to help the development of second language competence and proficiency of the learners, owing to structural complexity and lack of conformity to standard grammatical rules, topping in 1998, as well as its linguistic difficulty, which requires a lot of background knowledge. English Language and Culture, Sullivan in 1991. According to Ilyas in 2016, comments that literature nowadays is widely neglected in ELT due to the popularity of communicative approach. According to Zeri D. and Zeri Aegis S. in 2012, consequently many teachers feel anxiety about using literature in the classroom, that they distract the practice of using literary texts from the business of English language teaching. It seems to be like literature and English language teaching are in a difficult relationship all these years. Many experts mention that literature is difficult to use in ELT. So how to solve this problem? The teacher of literature have to do the approach before using literature in ELT. So for more information about approach, I will explain in the next topic about the approaches to the use of literature in ELT. The next question is, what is the difference between pessimistic views and optimistic views? So, what is pessimistic? And as we know, pessimistic in general terms means that something who lose hope or think it's impossible, it cannot be, it can. In this regard, literature is recognized as the authentic materials, but first, it's unable to help development of second language, competence and proficiency of the learners, as mentioned in 1997. Second, it has high structural complexity and lack of conformity to standard grammatical rules, according to Topping in 1997. Third, its linguistic difficulty requires a lot of background knowledge. Suliran 1991. It will do nothing towards promoting the student academic or occupational goals. Mackay in 1982. Next, optimistic view. Generally, the term optimistic mean it like someone who always think positive or always believe in their self. There is a hope or always think positive. In this regard, literature is useful in developing the students' linguistic knowledge, both on a usage or use level. It may increase their motivation to interact with text and ultimately increase their reading proficiency. Literature provides valuable authentic materials, develop personal involvement, and help contribute to readers' cultural as well as language enrichment. Colley and Slater in 1987. The use of literature in language teaching as an interesting and worthy concern, according to Sage in 1987. Literature is beneficial for ELT learners or ELT students, can benefit for the role of literature promoting, among other things, language acquisition and language proficiency, according to Ilyas in 2016. He added, literature is too important to be ignored in English teaching. So what is the difference between them? I can say pessimistic view is opposite from optimistic view. Yes. For illustrations like a glass filled with water to the halfway point, an optimistic view see that the glass as half full, but the pessimistic view see the opposite as half empty. So it seems to be like so there are some people who think it's good to use literature in ELT. It's gonna be a good action, but in the opposite, some people said it's impossible to use literature in ELT. It cannot be so like that. And the question is, what views did I support? Actually, if I would like to choose the optimistic view. Why? Because we just have to be optimistic, right? I mean, yeah, I know, using literature is more complicated than the other subject. It's more complicated and little bit difficult, but it doesn't mean it's impossible or it to use to teaching English. But we can resolve it, and there's hope. There's hope. So instead, literature have a pessimistic view, but yeah, literature have optimistic view. So why not? Literature is useful to students to increase their reading proficiency. So why not? I will choose personally. I will choose the optimistic view. The approach to the use of literature. What is the approaches to the use of literature in ELT? Approaches in this context refers to a plan, way, method, or strategy that English language teacher have to do when teaching literature. According to Lazar in 1993, the first step to do when a teacher plans to incorporate the use of literature in ELT is to identify the need of learners. Identifying needs refers to a systematic process of gathering information on the learner's necessities, what sort of literary works they prepare, lacks, what sort of problems they have in language knowledge and skills, and wants, how they want to learn the literary works. After identifying the learner's needs, the next step is to select the most appropriate approach, model, and to apply the model. In order to assist the language teacher in selecting the approach, she mentions three kinds of approach to the use of English language teaching context. They are, first, language-based model. In this model, the language teacher focuses on the language components available in a certain literature, like the use of grammar, types of vocabulary, and discourse functions and meaning, to be taken into account in designing syllabus and teaching materials. Second, literature as content. In this approach, the language teacher are required to suit the genre of literature with language components to teach in the classroom. For example, when the learners prefers to learn poetry, so this genre generally appropriate for practicing pronunciation skills, or when the learners is interested to learn short stories, so this genre is more suitable to improve their translation skills, and etc. Third, literature for personal enrichment. In this approach, the language teacher may use a certain literary works as the basis for selecting a particular activity to apply in the classroom. Activity is aimed at giving the learners an opportunity to express opinions, feelings, personal experiences regarding the literary work. For example, when the learner is interested in learning drama, the drama can be used as a stimuli for the learners to perform drama in English classroom. From this activity, they have their chance to express their feelings or practice some new expression and etc. Regarding to the three approaches, the language teacher may select one approach or even integrate the approaches for teaching purposes. Second question is, what is the approaches in ELT? According to Patton and Jane in 2008, approach refers to theories of language learning, and method refers to a way of teaching a language. Before beginning a teaching process, determining an approach is essential to do, which will help the teacher to select the most suitable method or teaching technique to be implemented in a classroom. Until today, language teaching approaches have undergone three stages of development, namely traditional approach, structural approach, and functional and communicative approach. Traditional grammar approach. Traditional grammar approach is a theory of a grammar which developed around 18th and 19th centuries in Europe. This is an old theory before the existence of modern theory. The main principle in this theory called prescriptive approach. This approach is opposite of the descriptive approach. The descriptive approach focuses on describing how the language is used, but the prescriptive approach explains how the language should be used. The prescriptive view that one dialect or variety of a language is to be valued more highly than others and should be the norm of all the speakers of language. Teachers have to make rules of a certain language as an absolute reference which should be full studied and followed by all learners of the language. Traditional grammar approach, such as grammar translation method or audio or lingual method. Structural approach. Structural approach as a method or process of searching for facts, That target is not only for one element as an individual that stand alone, but also the relationship between elements. Structural approach like the oral approach or situational language teaching, directed practice, or the direct method. Functional approach. Functional approach refers to how the language is used or the use of language for communication system. Communicative approach means the position of language as a system for expressing meaning, making interaction, or communicating with others. Functional and communicative approach such as the series method, language immersion, silent way, Suggestopedia, and etc. What is the three types of approaches for integration of literature in ELT? To answer this question, let's take a look with the following figure. In this figure, basis for selecting methods and procedures consists of three approaches, namely traditional grammar approaches, structural approaches, and functional and communicative approaches. We can see that the three approaches are relation. Traditional grammar approach using literature-based model and literature as context. Structural approach using literature-based model and literature for personal enrichment. And functional and communicative approach using literature as context and literature for personal enrichment. So they have relation. Literary works for English language teaching. What are the differences between literature and literary works? To answer this question, let's take a look with the definition from both of them. For the definition of literature have been explained in the previous topic, so let's see again. Literature may be defined as spoken or written text from humans' imaginative creation, which used to entertain or to educate the audience or the other people. And what is literary work? According to Butler C. in 1973, literary works refer to the value or the quality of literature as a result of critique or evaluation. Literary works may be defined as any spoken or written text that have been evaluated by reading and analyzing them. Reading them make readers feel educated or entertained, while analyzing them make readers within their way of looking at different issues and their beliefs. So what does the definition mean? It means that not all literature can be categorized as literary works. To be a literary work, literature must go through a process of evaluation. The evaluation purpose is to distinguish between literary text from non-literary text. And things to evaluate are fictionality, style of language, lack of pragmatic function, and ambiguity. Fictionality refers to a literature feature that shows the imagination of its reader in the world, in which the reader imagination, such as the characters, the scene, the conversation used in the text, they are usually fictitious or not real. It's fiction. For the example is from the story of Alice in Wonderland or Prince Helmet. Style of language. Style of language refers to special language used in literary works and significantly different from normal language that we use in daily communication. According to Geoffrey and Short in 1981, considered that the style of language used in literature special and slightly different from standard language, mainly in two aspects, namely syntax and diction. Syntax refers to the sentence structure used in literature, and diction refers to the choice of words used in literature. Lack of pragmatic functions refers to the true meaning or purpose that speaker want to express to the listener. Typical characteristic of literary works that is lack of pragmatic function. It indicates that literary work should have indefinite purpose or lack of pragmatic function, which make them different from other pitch of reader works. Lack of pragmatic function doesn't mean literary works do not have purpose. They actually have purpose, but the purpose of literary work not determined by its author, but mostly determined by its reader, depending on the reader's treatment on the written work. And what is ambiguity? Generally, term ambiguity refers to a word, a phrase, or a sentence that has more than one meaning. In this context, ambiguity means that messages in literary work are open to more than one interpretation. What is literature-based materials and the possibilities to use in ELT? Literary-based ELT materials may be defined as a special term applied to refer to any literatures or literary works which are used to teaching English language. And what is the possibilities to use in ELT? Is it easy to use in ELT? Many English teachers find difficulty to using one of them for teaching English. And why? Because 1. The teachers accustomed to using conventional teaching material, which generally contains lessons on the main components of language, such as pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary, and activities to develop language skills, such as conversation, discussion, presentation, and so on. Second, only a few of them are used to using literature-based teaching materials due to their lack of knowledge of how to use literature for language teaching, and this is a tough challenge for them. So how to cope the difficulty? There are at least 2 things that English teacher has to know before in order to be able to decide which literature or literary works in order to are relevant to use in English language teaching. First, knowing the determinant for selecting literature or literary works. Second, knowing the genre of literature. The determinant for selecting literature and literary work refers to factors which decisively affect the way of English teacher selecting literature and literary works for English language teaching. According to Duff and Malley in 2007, 4 determinants to take into account when using literature and literary works in ELT context. First is text selection, selecting relevant text to the student's needs and interests. Second, linguistic difficulty, selecting texts that are appropriate to the level of the student's language proficiency. Third is length, selecting texts that are suitable to the time allotment, cultural difficulty, and fourth, cultural appropriateness, selecting texts which are required for the language learner's development. The genre of literatures include literary works. According to Tracker Age, there are 5 genres of literature, such as drama, poetry, prose, nonfiction, and media. What is teaching and English language teaching? First, what is teaching? There are 2 ways to find the definition of teaching. First is virtual way and the second is virtual way. Virtual way. OxfordDictionaries.com defines teaching is impart knowledge or to instruct someone as to how to do something. And from Collins Dictionary say that teaching is the work that teacher does in helping the students to learn. And from dictionary.com say that teaching is the act of profession of a person who impart knowledge or skills. There are at least 2 things from those definitions. First, teaching is imparting knowledge or skills, and teaching helping students to learn. So teaching may be defined as a work to help students to learn, And from ritual way definition, there are three main stages. It's are pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching. Pre-teaching refers to things that teacher do before imparting knowledge to a group of students, while teaching is things that teacher do when imparting knowledge to a group of students. And post-teaching refers to things that teacher do after doing the process of imparting knowledge to a group of students. So what is teaching? According to Smith in 2009, defined teaching as a process of attending to people's needs, experience and feelings, and making specific interventions to help them learn particular things. So teaching may be defined as a process to imparting knowledge or skill to a group of students by applying three main stages, namely pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching. And what is English language teaching? If the definition of teaching add to teaching English, so maybe English language teaching can define as process of imparting skills and knowledge to a group of students whose English language is the foreign language through the implementation of three main stages, namely pre-teaching, while teaching, and also post-teaching. What is literature-based ELT and the possibilities to be employed in ELT? According to the previous discussion about what is English language teaching and literary-based materials, so literary-based English language teaching may be defined as the process to imparting knowledge and skill to a group of students whose English is the foreign language by using literature or literary works through the implementation of three main stages. They are pre-teaching, while teaching, and also post-teaching. In order to be able to use these types of literature to teach in English effectively, EFL teachers should consider several factors, such as first, students' interest in certain types of literature. Second, compatibility between literature and the level of students' language skill. Third, students' background knowledge of literature. 4. Time allotment and length of literature. 5. The possibility of using it for learning language purposes. Therefore, by considering the factors, literary texts may be thought in their original form or in simplified versions and in various types of difficulties. Literary-based English language teaching is about what to teach and how to teach. What to teach refers to skill and knowledge of English by using literature and literary works through the implementation of three main stages: pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching. How to teach refers to the implementation of three main stages: pre-teaching, while teaching, and also post-teaching. Let's see the following figure. In this figure, literary-based English language teaching about how to teach and what to teach. Result: teaching technique. Teaching technique is a way of imparting knowledge and skills of English by using literature or literary works. Teaching methods and ELT methods. What is the concept of teaching method and the types of teaching method? Teaching method defined as the principle used for instructions, which may cover decision on teacher's way in giving lessons, how to encourage students' participation in classroom activities, and how to select and use teaching instruments. The choice of teaching method to be used certainly depends on teaching goals and objectives, time allotment, skill that being taught, and also students' learning styles and preference. So what is the types of teaching method? According to Smith, there are some types of teaching method. So let's see the following figure. We can see in the Smith method, There are three main stages, such as teacher-centered method, active method, and also student-centered method. In teacher-centered method, there are talking, explaining, showing, questioning, and note-making. In active method, there are supervised students practice, discussion, group work, games, role play, drama and simulation, and also seminars. In student-centered method, there are reading for learning, private study and homework, assignment and essays, project and reports, independent learning, and self-directed learning. Smith method actually is come from while teaching in ELT method. I will explain in the next question. So actually the teaching method is the outcome from while teaching in ELT method. What is the concept of ELT method and the types of ELT methods? According to Paul Hirsch in 1975, being clear about what teaching is matters vitally because how teachers understand teaching very much affect what they are actually do in the classroom. So what about the types of ELT methods? About this context, I've been explained in the previous topic, that is pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching. But what is pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching? I have explained in the previous topic. So in this topic, I will explain in more detailed explanation. So let's see again the definition of pre-teaching. Pre-teaching refers to things that teacher do before imparting knowledge to a group of students. Pre-teaching also called planning for teaching. Planning means to make decisions about what to do and how to do something. Therefore, in pre-teaching, teacher is usually required to plan two things, namely planning for what to teach or teaching materials and planning for how to teach or teaching methods. What teachers should do in pre-teaching? In pre-teaching, teachers should identify about what to teach. To succeed in identifying in what to teach, the teacher a time to determine the type of teaching materials that will be used in the classroom. According to Brown in 1995, Richards in 2001, Tomlinson in 2007, and also Yassi and Mr. Kaharuddin in 2015 strongly suggest teachers to do a need analysis or NA. NA is important to know the type of teaching material suitable for a particular group of students. Second, formulate learning goals or objectives after the types of learning material are identified. Third, prepare and sequence the materials that will be used to achieve the learning objectives. And the fourth, create syllabus and lessons plan. Next is while teaching. Let's see the definition of while teaching in the previous topics. While teaching is things that teacher do when imparting knowledge to a group of students. In while teaching, the teacher's primary goal is to impart knowledge or skills to the learners through explicit instructions by referring to items in the lessons plan, such as time allotment, teaching activities or teaching methodology, like starting a lesson, presenting a lesson, and ending a lesson, supplementary materials like textbook and handouts, and extra classwork. As I said before in the previous topics, that teaching methods is the implementation or the outcome of while teaching is the Smith theory in 2006. And the last is post-teaching. Let's see again the definition of post-teaching in the previous topics. Post-teaching refers to things that teachers do after doing the process of imparting knowledge to a group of students. Post-teaching, also called evaluating teaching. Evaluating means to make a judgment. Post-teaching is like the review after pre-teaching and while teaching about is it effective or not. Being effective in this context means Teaching is successful in producing unintended results according to the stipulated course objectives. For the reason, this stage is also known as evaluation stage, in which teachers need to measure how much of the given material are mastered by the students, or how well students are learning in the materials, and how well students are meeting the state's goal and objective. What is the function of the knowledge of literature, approaches, method for integrating literature in ELT? I think in this research, the function of knowledge of literature, approaches, and method to integrating literature in ELT is to make the teacher easier to decide what to do before teaching literature in ELT, like make planning or decide the correct or the suitable way in teaching literature in ELT. Teacher may decide a suitable way or the great arranged way before teaching literature in ELT, so the students can reduce the mindset that literature is difficult, literature is too complex, and any mindset that students have in their mind. So the function of knowledge of literature, the approaches of literature, and the method of literature can make a teacher make easier decision, a correct decision before teaching literature in ELT. Conclusion. So guys, I will review some important things that I have been explained before, like literature is any spoken or written text and the result of human imaginative creation, commonly used to entertain or to educate people. Literature for ELT means like the way of teaching literature in ELT, and the relationship between literature and ELT is symbiotic. They cannot be separated because they need each other. Literature start becoming not popular since the orientation of language and learning is mostly focused on the functions of language, the pessimistic view and the optimistic view. The approaches to the use of literature in ELT, such as language-based model, language as context, and language for personal enrichment. Approaches in ELT such as traditional grammar approach, structural approach, and functional and communicative approach. Between literature and literary works, literature known as any spoken or written text from human imaginative creation and commonly used to entertain or to educate people, while literary works is the follower of literature. For the definition of literature-based materials, let's see again the definition from the previous topics. Literary-based ELT materials may be defined as a special term applied to refer to any literatures or literary works which are used to teaching English language. For the definition of teaching and English language teaching, let's see again in the previous video. So, teaching may be defined as a process to imparting knowledge or skill to a group of students by applying three main stages, namely pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching. So maybe English language teaching can define as a process of imparting skills and knowledge to a group of students whose English language is the foreign language through the implementation of three main stages, namely pre-teaching, while teaching, and also post-teaching. And the definition from literature-based ELT, let's see again. Literary-based English language teaching may be defined as the process to imparting knowledge and skill to a group of students whose English is the foreign language by using literature or literary works through the implementation of three main stages. They are pre-teaching, while teaching, and also post-teaching. the concept of teaching method according to Smith theory in this following figure, and the types of ELT methods such as pre-teaching, while teaching, and post-teaching. My recommendation to teachers and students in learning English. First is for teachers. I recommend teachers to have to know all the matters before teaching English to students, and like choose the suitable materials, etc. And for students or the learners, keep spirit to study, keep studying hard, keep studying in your enjoy way, and don't give up. I would like to say thank you so much for my lectures in this subject, Mr. Kaharuddin. Thank you so much for ordering me to make this mid-test video in introduction to literature subject, because in make this video I can increase my speaking, my confidence, and start to learn how to editing video. So I'm so glad because he ordered me to make this mid-test video. And for my students and my family who always support me and make this video, thank you so much, guys. I hope this video can be useful for others, because I am still learning. So please forgive for all my mistakes. And the last I say, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you in the next video. Bye.